do you want to talk about your latest triumph of the stage?
Yeah. Thanks, Thomas. Well, if you listen to Catholic Culture audiobooks, then you'll already be aware that last weekend, this was the weekend of May 21st and 22nd, I performed a about 45-minute long theatrical adaptation of one of Paul Claudel's five great odes. This was the third ode, titled Magnificat, and you can listen to that ode on Catholic Culture audiobooks. You can also listen to Thomas's excellent interview with translator Jonathan Geltner, whose translation of the five great odes I used in this performance, and with whom I corresponded a bit on the performance. But anyway, yeah, this was a 2-night engagement here in New York City at a church in West Harlem, and it went really, really well. You know, at the outset of this project, I really didn't know what it was going to look like. In fact, I chose this project in part because it would be an experiment for me. For a long time, I've been interested in poetry in performance. I think this is because of my background with classical theater, particularly Shakespeare. I mean, that's all poetry and in verse. But I think that with contemporary writing for the stage, there's a lot less poetry in there. Or if it is, it's more of like a postmodern kind of degenerate form of poetry. And so for a long time, I've been looking for a poet or a set of poems that would lend themselves to a dramatic, not a dramatic reading, but like a dramatic realization. The idea being, or the hope being, that theater could be leveraged in such a way as to provide another kind of avenue into engagement with the poetry. And so that was the experiment with this piece. I think it went really well. The first night was just an amazing response, really well attended, and just one of those nights when you can feel it as a performer that like everything is just, all the pistons are firing.
Yeah.
And
that's the one that I saw.
Yeah. And I've seen several theatrical performances, you know, perhaps like 2 or 3, maybe 4, where at the end there's just like this silence that nobody dares break with applause. And I've been on the receiving end of that as an audience member, and it's been moving every time. But I've never been in a performance actually on the other end where that was the case. And at the end of this performance, it was just sort of darkness and this single sanctuary lamp that was left lit. So the space is only illuminated by this red lamp, really suggesting, because this was performed in the basement of a church, that right next door is the true presence. And it was just silence, and that silence persisted for quite some time.
Yeah.
And that was very remarkable and humbling for me because, you know, at a certain point I got uncomfortable and I just wanted to be out of it.
And I wasn't sure when to start clapping, and but I was fine with that. But it was appropriately, it was your wife who was like, okay, now it's time to. she was the one who began the moving on to the next phase.
Yeah. So that was great. The second night was also great, another great response, but I will say that it was the vigil of Pentecost, and so there was this Spanish praise band in the church playing the whole show.
It was quite loud.
You could hear it very clearly, and then at one pivotal moment where the performance played a lot with silence, and at one particularly silent moment, there was just a woman like belting in tongues like through this microphone
in the church above.
And I just thought, you know, man, God has got a real sense of humor. But yeah, thanks be to God, that performance went well. And I kind of reflected afterwards too that, like, thanks be to God that was the second performance and not the first.
Right.
Because if that had been the first, and this just speaks to my weakness as an artist, but if that had been the first performance, I would have been really discouraged, and I would have really felt like this experiment didn't work. And again, this speaks to my weakness as an artist, because I don't know, I think that for me, a lot of the times I don't really know what it is that I have until I get it in front of people.
Right.
And perhaps that's a deficiency, you know, like maybe ideally I would know what it is I'm offering to people, but especially with live performance, it's so hard to really have a grasp of that.
And this was prepared in a pretty short amount of time too.
Yeah. I mean, I've been sitting on this text for a while, but really it was just a matter of a couple weeks where I finally, like, the rubber hit the road and I slapped it together. But now that it's built, now that it's done, my hope is that it will travel to other places, perhaps other churches, schools, theater spaces. It's a very it's an easy rig, very minimal in its design. It's just me performing it. So if any of our listeners, want to solicit a one-man performance of French Catholic poets, great ode.
Well, I mean, it was great. It was a great performance. People were really, it was a virtuosic, like, that you held people's attention for that long.
Oh, thanks.
Given the way you just described the piece, and I know that I've been seeing James do theater since, we were in high school, basically. And, I know it was the fruit of a lot years of study and ambition, and it was a great success, and it was. I'm very proud of you.
Thanks, Thomas.
It's the best thing I've seen you do for sure.
It was the best thing I've done for sure. Thanks be to God. I woke up the next morning just so full of gratitude because this was an experience that was given to me by God, totally unmediated by a casting director or another person's vision or another producer or something. There was a group of artists here who encouraged me and who supported me in this and who helped to realize it. But this was just between me and God. I think that for actors, so often the sense is that I have to serve another person's vision. I need to serve another person's agenda. And a lot of times you do, but that can't be it for the actor, I think. Because where's the integrity, or where's your agency in that, especially when you're in a cultural moment where the art form is so degraded? I think that, I came here to New York City from Los Angeles, and the entertainment industry out there is just totally debauched. I don't want to go on a tangent here, but for a long time I've been thinking about how can, a Catholic artist, a Catholic actor, really interface with this industry. I think it's becoming increasingly difficult to do so. There might have been a time when you could be like a Mark Wahlberg kind of behind the scenes, certainly there's been a long history of Catholic involvement in Hollywood, but increasingly it's becoming something where I don't even know if that level of involvement is possible anymore, in good conscience. I might be overstating it, but anyway, the point is that this experience was incredibly artistically gratifying. I learned a lot in the process. I know I grew as an artist, and I know that I had something original to offer, and that was something that was just me stepping out in faith with God and trusting Him and trusting the gifts that He had given me, that He has given me, and the opportunities that He's put in my path. It had nothing to do with me hustling or bowing to a politically correct agenda or compromises, that the industry might ask of someone to do before they can be in a position to offer something to others,
Right.
And so that was a lesson for me too.
Yeah.